Picture this. You're in the zone. The gym is heavy with chalk dust, the lighting is hitting just right, and you are grinding through another brutal set. You're sweating, you're pushing your absolute limits. But you look in the mirror, and that massive wide V-taper just isn't there. Well, welcome to this explainer. Today, we are completely stripping away the fluff. We're looking at the raw, clinical, biomechanical truth of shoulder growth. We're going to break down the only two science-backed exercises you actually need for undeniably wide shoulders. Consider this your masterclass in cinematic anatomy. Let's get right into it.
So, let's start with a really hard truth. Why aren't your shoulders getting wider? I mean, you're probably sweating through endless overhead presses, bench presses, and a million variations, but you've got absolutely zero lateral growth to show for it. It's incredibly frustrating, right? You're putting in maximum effort, but the width just isn't happening. Look, the problem isn't your work ethic. The problem is a fundamental misunderstanding of shoulder anatomy and how traditional gym routines are literally structurally failing your physique.
Here is exactly where things go off the rails. What makes shoulders look incredibly wide isn't just adding mass everywhere. It's heavily narrowed down to one highly specific region, the side delts. But standard routines, they completely ignore this priority. When researchers look at training volume, every single chest press you do heavily hits your front delts. Add heavy shoulder pressing on top of that, and you are literally flooding your front delts with volume. Keep doing this and you end up with overdeveloped front delts while completely starving the side delts, which are the true anatomical source of that V-taper width. Honestly, if wider shoulders are your main goal, you might actually want to ditch standard shoulder presses entirely and shift all that time directly to the sides.
Now, I know what you might be thinking, but I do dumbbell lateral raises. Okay, sure, but here's the clinical flaw of that classic movement. They challenge your delts the absolute most at the very top of the movement. And ironically, biomechanically speaking, this is exactly where your delts are the weakest. Because of this, you're forced to use lighter weights. But it gets worse. Modern hypertrophy science points heavily towards something called stretch-mediated growth. This means muscles grow incredibly well when they're challenged in their most stretched position. With standard dumbbells, you completely lose out on that crucial bottom stretch.
So how do we fix this biomechanical flaw? First, we have to understand the alignment of the scapular plane. It's not just raising your arms straight out to the sides like a letter T. To find it, lock your elbow into your side and just naturally rotate your arm outward. Right where your arm naturally stops, that's the plane. Moving your arm in this specific 3D anatomical path is the absolute optimal trajectory. It maximizes tension directly on the side delts and, crucially, sets us up for the biggest possible stretch at the bottom of the movement.
Let's move to our first essential movement and see how this actually builds on that anatomy. Enter the cable lateral raise, performed with total surgical precision. Step 1, set the cable just slightly raised off the floor, not at the very bottom, but just a bit up. Step 2, position yourself so the working arm moves behind your body. Step 3, raise the cable along that exact scapular plane we just defined. By raising the cable slightly and pulling from behind your body, you instantly shift the heavy challenge right to the beginning of the movement. Try to visualize the tension shifting directly onto those side delt fibers right where they're stretched the most. It is a completely different stimulus.
And hey, the proof is right here in the data. This comes from an 8-week ultrasound study conducted by researcher Dr. Milo Wolf on 25 experienced participants. They had people do standard dumbbell raises on one arm and cable raises on the other. At the proximal measurement site, closer to the top, both were highly effective. But look at the distal site, the lower part of the muscle. The cable side raise showed a massive 30 to 40% relative benefit over the dumbbell raise. The data is super clear here. Challenging the muscle with that continuous cable tension just works.
As Dr. Milo Wolf himself stated, there was a slight benefit, like around 30 or 40% relative difference in favor of the cable side raise. Now, what's really fascinating about this quote and the study itself is that they actually performed those cable raises with the arm in front of the body. Jeremy Ethier, whose brilliant insights we're exploring today, is currently running highly controlled MRI testing with custom machines to analyze the arm moving from behind the body, which provides an even deeper stretch. But even without that ultimate stretch, this quote already proves cables provide a critical, scientific edge for lateral growth.
Now, I hear some of you. What if you're training in a gritty, bare-bones gym with zero access to cables? Don't worry, we've got you covered with highly effective dumbbell alternatives that still hack that stretch-mediated growth. First up, partial reps. Do your normal full-range set to absolute failure. Then, immediately drop the weights, grab dumbbells that are 5 pounds heavier, and just pulse in that bottom stretched range. You're forcing the muscle to work to its absolute limit where it matters most. Second option, lean-in raises. Grab onto a pole, lean away from it, and do your raises.
By physically leaning into the movement, you manipulate gravity to shift the hardest challenge right down to the bottom of the range. Let's pause for just a second. I want you to think about this number, 7. This isn't arbitrary. Recent muscle activation research suggests that your shoulder complex might actually possess up to 7 different heads, all of which can be independently activated by your nervous system. 7! This means that tiny, precise adjustments to your technique don't just change the leverage, they literally light up entirely different fibers of your side delts that you have probably never ever trained before.
Which brings us perfectly to exercise 2, also known as the missing link.
To build a complete, beefy, 3D shoulder that pops from literally every angle, we need to target a highly specific, often neglected area, the rear portion of the side delt. Here's exactly how you target it clinically. Step 1, set the cable at wrist height. Step 2, this time you're going to grab the cable in front of your body and rotate your entire torso about 45 degrees toward the machine. Step 3, raise your arm in a straight line away from the cable, allowing your arm to move slightly back behind your torso as you lift. You might actually notice your range of motion is shorter here. Your shoulder might feel stuck way sooner than a normal raise. Listen to me, that is perfectly fine. Do not force it past that point. The anatomical tension is perfectly aligned to isolate that rear side delt hybrid. And again, if you're working exclusively with dumbbells, here is your clinical alternative for exercise 2. Set an incline bench just 1 notch down from straight vertical. Plant your chest firmly against the pad to eliminate absolutely all momentum. Let your arms hang completely dead and straight down in front of you and then raise them straight out to your sides. Now listen, you will not be able to go heavy on this. Drop your ego at the door. Focus strictly on perfect form and clinical execution to isolate that exact same rear side portion of the delt.
All right, now that we have the biomechanics mapped out, we have to talk about smarter progression, or how we are hacking the plateau.
Here's the harsh reality of shoulder training. You can set up these 3D biomechanics perfectly, but if you ego lift, you are totally wasting your time. It is a mathematical trap. Think about it. When you use 15-pound dumbbells for lateral raises, adding just 5 pounds means jumping to 20s. That is a 33% increase in load. To put that into perspective, it is the relative equivalent of adding 40 pounds to your bench press in a single workout. What do you think happens? Total form breakdown. You start swinging, you use momentum, your traps take over, and your side delts get absolutely zero extra benefit.
The fix is actually really simple, and it relies on the scientific fact that you can build muscle by adding weight or by adding reps. We want to use a broad, high-rep progression model. So, stick to a 10 to 20 rep range. Here is your clinical rule going forward. Do not even look at the heavier dumbbells or the next pane on the cable stack until you can master at least 15 perfectly controlled, slow, momentum-free reps across all of your working sets. Cut the fluff, master the weight first.
But what if you're on a cable stack and moving down just 1 pin is still way too heavy? Enter the micro-loading hack. This is a brilliant, gritty gym tactic. Take a small 2.5-pound or 5-pound fractional weight plate, hold it flat against the machine's weight stack, and stick the selector pin right through the center hole of the plate into the stack. This creates a highly specific micro-jump in weight. It allows for continuous, scientific progression without the dramatic, form-breaking leaps that standard machine stacks force you into. It's a total game changer. So, we finally arrive at the ultimate question. Are you going to keep wasting hours sweating under heavy, flawed presses that only build your front delts? Or are you ready to train smarter, not longer? Applying these 3D anatomical truths requires way less overall time in the gym, but infinitely more precision, focus, and clinical execution. It's all about working the exact fibers that create visual width. If you want to dive deeper into this kind of highly controlled, science-backed programming that takes out all the guesswork, definitely check out Build with Science for their custom plans. But for now, ask yourself, next time you pick up those weights, are you just lifting or are you architecting? See you in the next explainer.